AJ, morning, Puneet. Okay, it's lesson 5. Today's lesson won't be too long, maybe a little bit shorter. Just move our chat window over to my other screen so I can make sure I'm staying dialed into that. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm not going to overwhelm you. What we basically want to do is take our clothing store where we've scaffolded our controllers and views last week. We now have a working application, but we want to start to customize it. We want to improve some of the things in the user interface. We want to make where we have data displays, we want to make those display in a more meaningful way. We want to modify a little, and we want to also add a bit of additional functionality just to make the site kind of more complete and more robust. We're going to add input validation in our models. So we're going to be modifying the models, the controllers, and the views. I don't think we'll be creating any new files, but we're going to modify all of these things so that our clothing store is it looks better and it's more fully featured and robust. So, and a number of the techniques we're going to apply today, these may be things you want to integrate into your assignment, just to kind of make your project more polished once you have the scaffolding up and running. Okay, so it's not going to be a super long class today. So we're going to we'll make a bunch of changes in our clothing store. And then really the only things you have to do for next week, you've got obviously our review quiz and your assignment 1B, your submission is due next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. One other note just before we get started on our clothing store. I just want to thank everybody for, I got a lot of really useful responses in the survey that I put out. If you didn't respond to the survey, it's still available on Blackboard. There's not really a closing date for it. And you can find that in the week 4 folder. And I just like to kind of check in with everybody, get some feedback. How is your semester going overall? How is this course going? Do you have any constructive feedback? For me on the course. So a number of people, I think the thing that I got most commonly in terms of a constructive suggestion was sometimes I might just need to slow the pace a little bit. People say sometimes, their connection is slow or their computer is slow. So if at some point in the lesson, I'm showing a piece of code and I move on to something else, or you need a bit more explanation, feel free to let me know, like use the chat or use the mic and just ask me to pause for a minute while, you finish copying code or you want me to review a piece. So no problem. I'm, happy to do that. Just let me know if you need me to. And also there was there's some resources in there around mental wellness at the college. There's lots of supports. I know that transitioning to an online learning environment, it's not for everyone, particularly for people who are extroverts, who are really social, and who are really missing kind of that in-person interaction that we're used to having on campus. So there are some resources listed in that last question on the survey of if you're having any struggles at all, any challenges, kind of managing either with this course or anything in general. The college has paid professionals who are available to you for free. And they do a great job helping students. And I'd really encourage you to have a look at those resources and reach out to student services if they can help you in any way. Okay, so let's dive back into our clothing store. So I've already actually opened my Visual Studio up. There is an update available. It prompted me for an update this morning, which I just skipped over because I didn't want to take the time to download it. So if you're prompted to update your Visual Studio, you can just ignore it for now and you can always run your update later on. So we want to open our project in Visual Studio, and I've used my debug and start without debugging options just to get my site launched in the browser. So this is how we left it last week. We added some custom code to some description to the main index view. We added some references in our category and product models. So we added a reference. We created this one-to-many relationship that every category has a list of many products, and every product has a category ID as a foreign key, and it also has a reference to the parent object of category. And then we used the scaffolding tools to create categories and products controllers with a set of matching views. So that gave us these pages, and we started populating the database. We populated with some categories, and then we also populated some products. So this is how we left off last week. So we have a functioning website. It isn't exactly polished or finished. So what I want to do is look at maybe the products area, the index view, and we'll also take a look at the create view. And we're going to want to customize some of the things here to make these pages kind of look better and work better. So let's start with our products index view here. Why don't we compile a list of what changes should we make to improve this page? Yes, it's functional, but I would say there's some work here that we should do to make this better. Okay, that's a great suggestion, Sierra. Yeah, so our data, right? So the list is going to be easier to read if it's sorted from A to Z. What order is it sorted in right now? Yeah, it's basically just sorted by ID. So my first product is ID 1, ID 2. If I go and add a new product in, let's see. Yeah, Kevin, that's a great idea. Absolutely. We're going to do that as well. So I'll say blue Oxford shirt, which is what I'm wearing. So if I add it, even though it starts with B, my list will just go this way. So Kevin, that's a great suggestion, that we want to make it so we could click on any heading and sort it. Okay, those are two good suggestions. We're going to do both of those things. What else should we do with this page to make it better?
Styling is the only other thing I can think of at the moment.
Okay.
Maybe another link at the top that brings you right to products, like you got home categories.
Right. Okay. Good idea, Kevin. So yes, we could include a link in the navigation bar. Yeah, the title. So notice our page title at the browser top. It just says index here and there, which doesn't really mean anything. So we should probably rename those page titles to say products. We're going to do that. I can see one other fairly obvious change here. Yeah, Utsav, we will add the images. We'll do that in the latter part of the lesson. Yes. Daniel, ideally that would be great. We're not actually storing the inventory numbers, so I don't think we'll be able to implement that today. Yeah, we could probably fix up the CSS a little bit. We'll do that. Yep, so we will want to show the image. So Utsav mentioned that as well. What about the price? What's the issue with the price?
Doesn't exist yet. Or
yeah, well, we should format it as currency.
Yeah, I'm blind.
And then probably align them. Yeah, that's right, Taylor. So yeah, add a $sign. So add currency formatting. So some of these changes we can make in the view, some we can make in the controller, and some will actually we can make in the model. So let's start with the obvious changes that we can make inside of the products index view. So I'm going to go to our views, products, and I'm going to open up the index view. So the first maybe simple change is let's change the page title. Let's change the title on line 4 and on line 8. So the title just defaults to index, which is the name of the view. Let's change the title on line 4 and our heading on line 8. Let's change those to say products. We can also add a change on line 13. Lindsay suggested the CSS is boring. It is. We'll do a little more work with the overall CSS, but we can add a few classes to our table. Let's add table striped and table hover to our class definition. So these are also bootstrap classes. Okay, so you can see from the green bars here which lines have been changed. I've changed line 4, line 8, and line 13. So now our browser tab, our page title says products, our heading says products, and now at least we get, CSS isn't great, but it's a little better. At least we've got some alternating background colors on our table, and we get this rollover effect as I move my mouse from over top of the rows. Each row kind of gets highlighted. Okay. We'll come back to the image display later. So these are a few of the changes we're going to make in the view. I want to deal with the first change Sierra mentioned. We want to sort alphabetically. So for this, we're actually going to make a change to our products controller to the index method, because the index method has the query that we're using to get our list. So let's open up our products controller. And here's our index method. It starts on line 23. It's the first method in the controller after the constructor. And in here, here's our query. So we don't have to write any SQL when we're working with .NET MVC. We're using our context. So this is our database connection class. And in here, we're getting our list of products, our DB set. And we're also including the product category so that we can display the category name as well. So in effect, this is doing a join. This dot include, so this basically says get the products, but also include the parent object. So when we're writing this query, we can also now add sorting. So we can chain on a method here. So we've added the dot include method is already here from the scaffolding, but now we can add a dot order by clause. And we're going to use one of these lambda expressions, so it's like an anonymous function. So I'll use just a local variable called p. And when I mouse over it, it tells me that the p is referring to my list of products. So we want to filter, we want to sort by our p dot name. So this is going to add sorting to our query. Under the hood, it will write an order by products.name clause, but we don't actually have to write the SQL. So we're going to add order by to sort the product query results. So we've made a change to the controller. So I need to build the solution. So I'll just highlight the new code here. I'll shrink this down so we can see it. Okay, so the blue order by clause is new. Mike, great question. I'll answer that in a second. It's actually slightly different. So now when our query runs, notice our products are sorted alphabetically by name. Now, Mike asked a really good question. What if we want to sort by multiple columns? So for example, first by name and then by price. We can only use order by once, but we have this. Then we have then by. So we have the methods order by and then by. And you can also see we have then by descending. We also have order by descending. So if you wanted reverse order, which would be typical, for example, if we were sorting, let's say by date, and we wanted to show most recent data at the top, we would sort order by descending on the date property. So you can see here. So if I pick order by, there's order by descending. So Mike, in the chat, it would actually be this. So first we would use order by. And then for the second column, we could use then by. So order by or order by descending, we can only use once. Then by or then by descending, we can use as many times as we want. So there's no limit to the number of columns we could chain on in terms of sort order. And we have the descending option for both of these as well. So you may want to use some kind of order by in your assignment if it makes sense that your data isn't just sorted from oldest to newest by ID, because that'll be the default that the scaffolding gives you. Okay, so we've sorted now. So now the other two things we want to do, we want to format the price, and then we're going to implement Kevin's suggestion of making all of our column headings clickable to sort, and we'll use a little bit of JavaScript, client-side JavaScript for that. So for the price, we have a couple of options. There's two ways we could do the price. One way would be to change the price. Just we could add some formatting directly in our view, which would be okay, but there's kind of a more efficient way of doing it. Because you'll notice if I click on any one of my products and I go to details, the price is also displayed here. And again, it's just shown as a regular decimal number. It's not currency. So if we wanted to format it and we change the views, we'd have to change both the details view and the index view, which would work. But a simpler way of doing it is we can actually set the format of our price in the product model. And by changing it there, it will automatically show us currency here and here, anywhere the price value is represented in HTML, not inside an input, even on our delete page. Again, so we could make this formatting change in all three views, or we could just do it in the model, and that change will cascade to all of the views. So I'm going to do it that way. It's more efficient. So in my product model, I'm going to set up a display format for the price. And the .NET framework has a bunch of pre-built formats. It has formats for currency. It's got formats for different date and times, as well as some other common expressions. So I'm going to pick data format string. And Microsoft uses this syntax. So the 0 represents the value we want to format, and the C represents currency. So this format will use the regional settings of the web server. If our server is in North America, it's going to display dollars. If it's in Canada or the US, it will display the currency in dollars and cents. If our server was in India, it would display it with a symbol for rupees instead. So by adding this line to the price, throw it in the chat for you, this should automatically display our price values as currency on 3 views, on index, on details, and on delete. Anywhere this price is displayed as HTML. So we'll go back. So we can see it. So I'll go back and refresh my product list. So I've put this above price. Notice my prices are now formatted as currency on index. And if I go to details, that formatting appears anywhere we display the price property. So we didn't have to change it in the model, but it's a more efficient way to do it. Now I'm going to go back to my list. I'm going to create a new product that has a different price. So all of these prices, they're all 4 digits. Right? So if I add a new product, oops. So now our prices are no longer aligned. Typically with numeric data, especially currency data, if we're going to display it in a list or in a grid, we should probably right align it. So all of the cents line up. So I want to modify the price heading and data in the index view to make this cell of our table aligned to the right side. So I'm going to go back to the index view. And on line 19, this is the heading for my price column. I'll use a bootstrap class of text right. I want that on line 19 and on line 40. This should right align the prices instead of left aligning them. Again, it doesn't really affect the functionality of our site, but it's about the usability. So now my prices are aligned to the right. I think it looks better this way. So we're getting there. We've improved it. Our titles are better. We've added a little bit of CSS. We've added currency formatting. We're sorting alphabetically. And we've aligned our prices. Like I said, we'll come to the image later. I now want to implement Kevin's suggestion about adding column sorting. So typically, it's typical behavior users expect on a web page when we show them a list of data, a grid of data. You know, the behavior is normal that they can click on any column heading to sort by that column. If they click it again, it sorts in the reverse order. So we can use a little bit of JavaScript for this. And the script you need is in the week 5 folder on Blackboard. So the fourth item here says sortable.js for table sorting. So let's open up this link. So it's a simple open source script. So it gives us an example of an HTML table, looks kind of like ours. But once the script is enabled, we can click on any column and the JavaScript will resort and also give us a little up or down indicator based on the column sorting. Kevin, I assume this is what you were thinking of when you suggested it. Something like this.
Yeah, something like in our file explorers where you see name and date modified and stuff, and you click on whatever heading, and it just sorts by that.
Right. So the instructions for this are pretty simple. It's basically 3 steps. We have to download the script library from this link. We have to add a link to it. We'll add it into our layout template. That way all the pages in our site will have access to use the script. And then we'll have to add the class of sortable to our table tag. And then we'll do one more thing just for formatting. The only thing this doesn't do is notice there's no indication these column headings are clickable. I don't get the little cursor, hand cursor. So we're going to want to change that. So step 1 is download the library. And we have to download it to a specific place. I'll show you where we want to save this file. Can anybody tell me, if we look at our project, what folder did Visual Studio give us for our JavaScript files, our client-side JavaScript? There's a folder somewhere in the project. Does anybody remember where it is? Yep, in www root, and then in which folder in here? Yeah, we can put it in, you could basically put it in one of two. You could put it in JS. There's also a lib folder. That's often for third-party libraries, but I'm going to put it in the JS folder, as Sierra and Mike suggested. So I'm going to right-click download the JavaScript library. So right-click, and I'm going to save the link as, and then I'm going to go to my project folder and save it. Would help if I remember where my project is. So inside of www root and JS, so I'm going to save it here. So step 1, done. Step 2 is we want to add a link to that JavaScript. It says put it in the header of our page. We're just going to include it at the bottom of our layout file. So I'll open up my shared layout. And down here at the bottom, we've got some links to some JavaScript. And because this is third-party code, this isn't ours, we didn't write it, I should put a reference where this script came from. So this is the kind of thing I'm asking you to do in your assignment. If you're using third-party code, you should give credit to the source. So I'm going to copy the URL from the tutorial. and I'll put in the link. So that I'm giving the developer credit. Now there is one weird naming thing here. You'll notice the script file we downloaded is called Sortable with 2 T's. So that was step 2. Link to the file. But then step 3 is onto our table tag that we want to make sortable, we need to add class of sortable with 1 T. So now I'll go back to my index view. And on line 13, we've already added table striped and table hover. I'm now going to add sortable with only 1 T, because that's the name of the class in the script file. And now we can try it out. So I've added sortable to my class. I'll refresh my products index view now. And now I can click on any one of my column headings and they sort. So it's mostly functional. We've followed all the steps in the tutorial. There's one other change I want to make to this, and that is I want to change my Jillian, that's a good point. It's possible to do, but typically most grids don't do that. If we load a typical page in the browser where there's a grid of data, most grids don't by default have an arrow. They just show you a default sort order, typically. And the arrow appears if you specifically click on one of the column headings. But I do want to change the cursor because there's no real indication to the user that these headings are clickable. When I put my mouse over them, my cursor doesn't change, suggesting that they could be clicked on. So we've added the functionality, but we haven't made it clear to users that this functionality is here. So what we want to do is basically use empty anchor tags on our column headings so that they look like links that a user can click on. So what I'm going to do here so we're going to kind of make dummy links. They don't actually go to a different page. Ah, okay. So yes, you were one step ahead of me then. So I'm just going to add it, these dummy links, link tags. I don't really need it on the image because you're not going to sort by pictures, but we can sort based on all the other columns. So I didn't bother wrapping the image heading inside an anchor tag, but I've wrapped all the other headings in anchor tags. So now they're going to look like links, so there's a visual cue to the user that, hey, you can click on this. So we just use href equals a hashtag or a number sign. So it will look like a link, but we haven't specified any target, so the link doesn't actually go anywhere. It won't take the user off to some other place. So let's see how this works. So I'll refresh. And now these are blue, and I get the little hand cursor when I mouse over them. I didn't bother with image. So this is a neat reusable script. It's just pure JavaScript, so you can use it in on any kind of site. I think we actually may have used this script for those of you who are in my PHP class in winter. I think we used it in our PHP music library. So this is not really .NET at all, but it works on the front end with any site. Okay, so we've made some good changes to this page. Titles, CSS, sorting, currency formatting. So this page is much improved, I think. Okay, so what you would have to do, Kevin, is we'd have to override. So we'd have to inspect the class definition here. So Bootstrap theme. So let's say, okay, so it's just using the default link color. Okay. So what we can do, we could override some of the colors in the style sheet. We'll actually do that a bit later. Okay. So we'll maybe change our navigation bar color and we'll pick a complementary color for our links. Okay. So we'll maybe come back to that. Remind me. We will do it, but a couple other things I'd like to look at first. So this page is looking better. I also want to look at the create product. Oh, one other thing, while our layout page is open, Kevin did suggest that we should add a link to products, because right now the only way to get to this page is to actually type the URL in the address bar. Super inconvenient. And this, I mean, this will be a private page. This isn't going to be a page for a customer. This will be like a management page. Right now it's public, but we'll secure it in the next couple of weeks. So while I have our layout file open, we've added the script section down at the bottom. So I'm going to copy this link to the categories on lines 25 to 27. I'm going to add a new link in my nav bar that says product. I'll just throw this in the chat. So right underneath your categories link, make another link for products. So now we'll have an easy way to access the product section of the site. So now I've got a products link that takes me here. Yeah, Jillian, that might work. We can try that. Later on, I'm going to change all the links globally. I'll go and find a few colors that are complementary, and I'm going to override some of the styles and change some of the colors. But I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. But you certainly can try that if you like. So I want to have a look at our create product form for a minute. What things should we change here? Yep, great suggestion. Thank you. This page looks pretty good, but I can see a few things that should be changed here. What do you think? Okay, yeah, we could have placeholders. We could do that. Anything else we should do with this? Yeah, this category ID. Yeah, so we probably want to rename that. Yep, so Kevin, I think that's what Lindsay was suggesting about prompt. What about the titles? The top here, it just says create. Then we've got this kind of weird two-part heading. What about here? What would you change about the drop-down list? Yep. So we could combine those headings to just say create product. And we probably want to sort this alphabetically. So we'll want an order by in the query in our method. Okay, so let's make a few of these changes. And then in the second part of class, we're also going to want to change this to a file upload box where the user could actually browse to an image and upload it. And once we got to do the file upload first before we'll be able to actually display the images here. So let's make some changes. There's one other problem which isn't apparent visually, but functionally. So not only required. Okay, so we have made it required. So we shouldn't be able to do this. So we also have an issue around, we need some validation rules around the price. That we've got to make sure when a product's being added, it has an appropriate price value. So we're going to make a few changes again in the view, a few changes in the model, a few changes in the controller. Let's clean up this form. And then we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll deal with the file upload and display of the images. And we'll also deal with some site-wide CSS customization. So let's first deal with some of the obvious things in the products create view. Again, I want to change line 4. It just says create. We'll change that to say create product. And I'm going to combine, we have these two headings, an H1 and an H4. I just want my H1 to say create product. We don't need this H4. That makes more sense. We could add some placeholders if we want. So I've added a placeholder. You can add them for the others as well if you like. But I'll just start with 1. So I've changed line 4 and line 8 and line 17. You can add as many, whatever placeholders you want to the various inputs. So we've got a placeholder here. It now says create product. Mikkel, can you give an example? Can you flesh that out a little bit more? Like what are you thinking exactly?
So like an example would be like next to, I don't know, next to description or something, you would put an example of a description. Like maybe someone thinks, oh, maybe I have to write up like, I don't know, that's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of like ridiculous, but like maybe like, oh, I have to write like 2 lines of whatever for this thing, when you only have to be like, oh, it's red, instead of like, you kind of like give an example of what it should look like, the answer that you want essentially. So
Okay, yeah, we could do that. That's a good idea. Okay, so maybe I'll put in a placeholder.
it's kind of like a placeholder, but it's not a, yeah, I don't
Right,
know how to
but sorry,
explain it.
the placeholder will show in the box until the user starts typing.
Yeah.
So we'll say customers will see this. I think I'm also going to change this from an input. I'm going to change this to a text area tag. So I'm going to change input to text area, and text areas are not self-closing. Yeah, the placeholder, it's basically like a hint, and as soon as you start typing, it goes away. So I'll change that text area, sorry, that input to a text area so we get a multi-line text box.
Rich, I actually have another question. Um, how do we add the feature where it's like to check if the person's a bot or not? How do we implement those? I was actually curious about that.
We're going to do that next week.
Oh, okay, okay.
So we will secure all of the pages we've created for categories and products. We'll make them private, but not this week. Okay, so you can see our placeholders are here, but they don't stay here. As soon as you start typing, the placeholders disappear. They're just prompts to the user. Okay, so we want to deal with the label and the sorting in our dropdown. So our label, we can fix the, again, we can give an alias for category in our model. So if we go back to the product model, for our category ID, we can basically give it an alias or a friendly name. So wherever it's displayed, it displays as category, not category ID. So we just can use the annotation display with name equals category. Okay, more user-friendly. And again, by doing this in the model, this is going to rename that label both on our create view as well as on our edit view. So if I refresh now, my label is going to change from category ID to category.
Rich, is there another thing that we can maybe do?
Sorry, can you speak up just a little bit, please?
Yeah, sure. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. Is there a way, so when we hit create, so let's say one input was invalid. So let's say you put a negative price by accident. Is there a way to like keep all the other
Yes.
why can't I think of
Yeah, we're going to see that in just a second.
Oh, okay. Without like erasing them essentially.
Yep,
And then having to
absolutely.
refill
That's
them.
what we're going to do next. So the price.
Okay.
So we've already set up one rule around our price, that it should be formatted as currency. We've set our name is required. So we want to set up with our price, not only that it's required, but we want to set out a range, that there's a minimum and a maximum acceptable value. And if we get any values outside of that, we want to display an error to the user. And yes, Mikkel, good question. It will persist all the other values. So I can use the range annotation. So we'll say no product can be less than 1 cent. And no product can be more than, everything's got to be less than 1 million, but must be 1 cent or more. So I'm going to add this above the price column. So we'll refresh, and now I'll try again. I was able to add a product with a negative value before, but now that I've added this validation in the model, I shouldn't be able to anymore. So I'll say another negative product. So notice right away I get a validation error. So the models use jQuery validation, so I don't even have to submit the form. Immediately it shows me an error message. And Mikkel, just to answer your question about the other values, I can't even submit the form because it's using jQuery now. Until I fix this, my value, as soon as I fix the value, jQuery automatically validates it again, and that red error message goes away, and now I can submit.
Okay, so you don't even have to worry about the other fields
Nope.
being
And nope.
reset.
It takes
Okay.
care of all of it.
Oh, that's really nice. Okay.
Yeah, so it's great because we are validating on the server, but it uses jQuery to also validate on the client. And this validation will work both for adding and editing. So let's say I go back now. If I try to save this product that I created previously, it won't let me save changes to it now because I've violated the validation rule in the
Okay.
model.
That's really good.
It is awesome. It saves us tons of time and it really helps us ensure we're getting good data from our users. And
Is there
we
a
don't
way to
have to
put it?
worry with writing any of the client-side validation. All we have to do is add the validation in the models.
Is there a way to put an error message next to like the create or save button as well? Because like I know sometimes even myself when I'm on like a page, I'll miss like input something and then like I won't even know what's wrong and I'll realize, oh shoot, that's the thing that's wrong up there, but I won't have looked. I'll be wondering to myself what's wrong. So is there like a way to put like an error message at the button next to the button as
Yeah,
well?
good
Because like
question.
if you
So
have a
you'll
long form.
see there's options in the form. There's a validation summary div at the top. So we can use that, but then it's got these individual validators. So you can customize these if you don't want the messages in the individual validators. You can customize it to show, for example, to use this validation summary to show all of the errors. Yeah, so it's up to you how you do it. I'm just going to leave it like this, but yeah,
Oh,
the
okay.
short answer is yes, you can.
Okay. Okay.
So now
That's
the
good.
last thing we want to do with this before we take a break is we just want to sort this drop down. So that'll have to happen in our controller because in our create method, we've got code that fetches the list of categories and populates them into this drop down list. So we're going to want to add an order by to that query. So in my products controller, you can either scroll down to the create view or you can use this little drop down up at the top right. And what we want is the first version of create. We've got a get and a post. We'll actually need to modify both of these. So in the get method, on line 52, here's our query. Get the list of categories from our database connection class, put them into a select list, use the ID as the value and the name as the text. So in this query on line 52, we need to add an order by. So I'll put the code in the chat. So I'm adding in the order by clause into this query. And now when I refresh my page, this list should be resorted. So now it's alphabetical bottoms, shirts, shoes. So this page is mostly done now, with the exception of our file upload, right? We've changed our text input to a text area. We've added placeholders. We fixed the titles. We fixed the label, and we've sorted our dropdown. And we've added validation rules to ensure that any price values the users enter follow our rules. They can't create a product with a price that makes no sense. Now we actually need to do, you can see I've added this order by here on line 52 in the get. We also need to add it down here on line 69. So this is if we submit the form and there's an error and our form reloads. Again, our dropdown needs to be sorted in this case. So you can copy and paste or just add the exact same code to line 69. All right, so we're getting here. It's almost noon. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to push all the changes that we've made so far today. I'm going to push those up to GitHub. If you need them, we will take a 10-minute break here and we will come back at about 10 after 12. And then we're going to work on our image upload and our image display. We're going to do some more CSS customization before we finish for today. Okay. All right. We will be back shortly.